Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Fiber Broadband Association's Fiber for Breakfast. We're now in our 19th episode of 2022. Before we kick off, I'd like to thank our sponsors of Fiber for Breakfast, including our gold sponsor, CHR Solutions, Millennium, and Plume, and our silver sponsor, Graybar. So now only 2 days away from the NTI issuing the $42.45 billion BEAD NOFO, the Notice of Funding Opportunity. So the Fiber Broadband Association will be holding a special webinar next Wednesday, May 18th at 3 p.m. Eastern to break down the NOFO with our policy experts. Our Fiber Connect 2022 annual conference is now less than 5 weeks away and will be held in Nashville, June 12th to 15th. The Gaylord and the Inn at the Gaylord are both now sold out. We got our overflow hotel last week and it sold out like crazy, but we are providing a list of nearby hotels with availability. So please register. Last year was amazing, but we're already way ahead of last year's with registration and on content. We also have over 70 companies on the waiting list to exhibit. So it is, everybody's trying to get in. This is going to be the biggest and best broadband event in the world this year. So you're not going to want to miss that. On Monday, the White House made a big announcement on the Affordability Connectivity Program, or also called ACP, which is the $30 per month federal subsidy that's part of the IIJA. This announcement included a number of service providers such as AT&T, Comcast, Verizon, and smaller rural providers such as our friends at Jackson Energy Authority in Tennessee and Comporium in North Carolina that are going to be providing ACP eligible households with free high-speed internet. This is a big win-win-win for the administration and for service providers that will be receiving the federal subsidies, and most of all for low-income consumers that are going to get free broadband service. That brings us to today's Fiber for Breakfast session, where we're going to be focused on the U.S. business technology analysis, telecom transformation in the new normal. But before I formally introduce today's guests, I'd like to introduce Trish Ehlers from our team, who's going to walk us through some housekeeping items.
Thanks, Gary, and good morning to everyone who's joined us today. Before I go over a few logistical items, I'd like to once again thank our Fiber for Breakfast sponsors. Gold sponsors, CHR Solutions, Millennium, and Plume, and silver sponsor, Graybar. Now, if everyone could just keep in mind that you're all in listen mode only. To ask a question at any time, simply type it into the question box located within your control panel, and we'll host a Q&A session with our expert at the end of today's session. This presentation is being recorded and will be available to members only on FBA's website within 24 hours. You can find the recording in the Events tab under the Fiber for Breakfast drop-down option. At the conclusion of the presentation, you'll be prompted to complete a very brief feedback survey. Please take a minute to do so. We truly appreciate your input. I'll pass it back to Gary now to introduce our panelists and get us started. Gary?
Thanks, Trish. And good morning. I'm Gary Bolton, the president and CEO of the Fiber Broadband Association. Last week at Fiber for Breakfast, we spoke with our friend Josh Hildebrandt from the Georgia Technology Authority on mapping and broadband funding in Georgia. This morning, we had the pleasure to speak with my old pal, Matt Davis of Independence Research. Matt and I go back decades when he was the broadband analyst at IDC and then at Yankee Group. And I can remember I had him speak. You remember this, Matt? I had you speak at the Global Sales Conference over 15 years ago in Puerto Rico when I was at Siena.
Yes.
Good times in the rainforest. So this morning, Matt will be sharing his latest research on U.S. business technology analysis, telecom transformation in the new normal. Matt Davis is the founder and principal analyst at Independence Research LLC, where his research is focused on technology, telecom, and broadband internet service, with a focus on U.S. fiber technology deployment. Before forming Independence Research in 2016, Matt founded the Broadband Access Technology practice at the Yankee Group, focusing on the deployment of broadband services worldwide. And in 2006, Matt joined IDC, where he led the consumer and SMB research practices focusing on service provider, telecom, and internet strategy. So welcome, Matt. And for our audience, please type in any questions as we go for our Q&A session at the end. With that, I will turn it over to Matt.
Thanks, Gary. I remember that speech in Puerto Rico. They sort of lined me up in this little tunnel, and there's a comedian on ahead of me telling jokes about pawn. Anyway, so they sent me through the little tunnel with rock music going, and I stepped out, and now to talk about DSL. Anyway, it was quite the event. It was nice to be there. However, we're not going to be talking about DSL today. We're going to be talking about telecom transformation through the new normal. So Trish, if you could move us to the introductory slide, I guess. So I do a number of surveys in a given year, and normally they're looking at U.S. business spending on broadband and UC&C and basically everything. But for this one, I thought, what have been the major changes in the industry that through the pandemic, and not just telecom services, but all services. Today we are going to focus on the core telecom services, but I looked at things like e-commerce and digital transformation and IT services, et cetera, just to try to get a gauge of sort of where we are sort of in that technology transformation phase. And so this survey was a national survey. It captured the voice of 1,000 business IT decision makers, or those that were part of an IT decision making team that were participating in spending decisions. So the way I structured it is looking at business challenges to begin with, and then I divided them into major challenges and minor challenges, and I'll sort of explain what those are. And then looked, through the pandemic, we tended to think, oh, geez, we're really going to ratchet down spending in different areas as they become more or less important. And so we sort of focused in on that. There's some surprises in there. The actual services that we'll take a look at are, of course, if I'm at the FBA on a FBA webinar, it's got to be look at connectivity. But then sort of those services that have really become part of a lot of business packages, including internet backup, which is really emerging, mobile voice and data, unified communications, of course, and then looking at managed Wi-Fi as well within the context of transformation. So Trish, if we could move to the first content slide, I guess. So as a proud member of the National Federation of Independent Business, I tend to look at what's happening in the SMB space and look at the concerns that small businesses have. And there's no surprise here that staffing challenges and supply chain issues have been top of mind, overall in the business community. But technology issues have been up there as well. So this is, much more top of mind than even things like financing and healthcare and taxation. Those things that small businesses deal with all the time. And so what I think, I was interested in, and I hope the audience is too, are, what technologies really have been transformed the most through the pandemic. So I have answers. So when we isolate technology, internet connectivity is right up there. Not surprising, not surprising. And then we see the mobile voice and data, have really undergone very muted change, and there was a fair amount of reduced spending in that as well. So mobility was one of those things that I had to really think hard about when I saw some of the results from this, and we'll discuss that as we go through. Internet backup being number 3, a big change for internet backup was that small businesses actually adopted it. So a lot of the other major and minor changes were sort of tweaks or switching providers or doing things like that. With internet backup, it was I need internet backup because I've become so reliant on my on internet connectivity. I've run surveys looking at the impact of internet downtime on small business productivity. And when you ask small businesses, you know, if your internet goes down, how much productivity would you lose? You know, an incredibly high amount would lose over 80% of productivity and just be sort of shut down. So we've entered we've been there for a while, but we've really entered the realm of there can be no downtime. So let's dig into some of the major changes. So that major change that I mentioned in internet backup was, you know, basically getting internet backup to begin with. So if you look at the difference between small businesses and larger businesses in terms of existing internet backup, small businesses really need it, but only about 30% or so have it. So there's a big opportunity for service providers to bundle in internet backup with internet connectivity. So internet backup had the biggest change. And then we see, you know, what I kind of think of as a combo of internet backup, Wi-Fi, and internet connectivity, all up doing major changes. And those major changes means, you know, you're maybe moving up to fiber, maybe you're upgrading your voice infrastructure, you're changing providers, you're doing something that's going to require significant effort, training, resources to do. Whereas the minor ones, you know, I sort of ratchet up my internet speeds a little bit, or you know, sort of do tweaks within your existing service. So let's take a look at the minor changes. And so we see here that with communications, unified communications, collaboration, we saw that they did the most sort of tweaks versus internet backup, for instance. You see there's not much tweaking that you're going to do there, but with UC&C, there's just so much to it, so many ways you can add seats, you know, reduce them, you know, more sort of remote applications being adopted, et cetera. And then, of course, video conferencing really driving, you know, a lot of the activity. We're going to see that in spades a little later. So beyond minor changes, we're also interested in reduced spending. Now, I look at this slide as being good news, where only 12% to 15% have actually needed to reduce spend in different areas. Again, the head scratcher here to me was mobile voice and data. And what I've began to sort of understand, I think, is we automatically equate mobility with remote. But I think that there's two kinds of remote. There's fixed remote and there's mobile remote. And the big change in technology over the last, you know, 3 years of the pandemic, I mean, I guess I'm calling an end to it, has been that fixed remote situation. You know, whereas before we used to think of sort of remote as being, you know, out of the office at any time. The office has the home office really is transforming into basically just another endpoint of the enterprise and mid-market. Remember that even though small businesses, you know, if you look at the 24 million sole proprietorships, and then you look at the 6 million or so employer firms in the United States, only, you know, a couple of 100,000 of those are either categorized in the mid-market or the enterprise, yet they make up the bulk of employees. So whereas small businesses, you know, may not need to sort of extend that enterprise grade connectivity and service, mid-markets act very much like enterprises, and, you know, there's a lot of employees there. So if you're sort of looking at a small business or business data, divided into two things, locations, which we've been focused on because that's where sort of the broadband connections are, but also now that we're looking at work from home, the number of employees is important as well. So we did see reduced spending in both those areas. So what I did here in this slide was to look at the differential. So I took the two extremes, reduced spending versus major changes, and sort of I looked at the differences. So you see major changes are in the green, reduced spending is in the red, and you can kind of see that mobility being sort of the least important in improvements and hit the hardest with reduced spend. Whereas internet backup highest in major, and actually internet connectivity being the lowest in reduced spending. So this kind of shows some winners and losers, I guess, through the pandemic. It's not an enormous difference, but what I did is I sort of took these numbers and looked at the differential between major change and reduced spending, and you can kind of get a sense of the different, internet backup netted out at 14% versus mobile voice and data at 3%. So if you're trying to think through where are we seeing the most dynamics, sort of this gives a few clues anyhow. So let's look at those changes a little bit more deeply. So for internet connectivity, you're always expecting, saving money to be an issue, reliability issues, of course, you want rock solid reliability when you're working from home, when you're dealing with, customers or potential clients. But the one that sort of stood out for me, and it was a bit of a theme, as I guess it should be for this exercise, was paying for employee home internet costs. Now, I've been tracking the participation rate for fixed broadband subsidization for a couple of surveys now, maybe 3 or so, a couple before, or one before the pandemic, one early on, and then this one as well. And the other surveys, it was 7%, 9% kind of thing, employee participation in subsidization. Here we see a jump up to 38% as far as those that were making changes. So this is, I think, a different mindset where we may see mid-market and enterprises in particular, but some small businesses as well, start to think about their overall network extending to the home, and maybe even you're not using the same ISP, but you do want to have rock solid connectivity for your employees. And the other one that I sort of, that we're all interested in, I think, is the need for more upstream speed, which obviously plays into the strengths of the fiber blitz that's just about to occur here in the United States. So let's move to the next slide, please, Trish. So internet backup. So with internet backup, obviously the primary is, hey, my internet goes down and let's fail over to it. But what else could it possibly be used for? And the top two that were getting interest were making it available to employees when they work from home. So again, the same concept of wanting to extend connectivity to your employees to enable them. And then there's also remote business locations where internet service isn't available. So you see that there's interest for internet backup capabilities that extend beyond just failover. And then using it for temporary business locations. So internet backup not only serves the purpose of creating more than 5 nines, whatever it might be, to other applications as well. And we can move to the next slide. And so we have Wi-Fi, wireless LAN. you look here at extending Wi-Fi coverage outside the core office, lots of interest in that, in industrial plants, in locations outside for your fleet, for, basically getting outside the four walls of the customer prem, and, sort of blanketing more and more of the workspace. It was number one, but right after that, and for managed Wi-Fi, I like to focus on what I think of as the big three applications for it, which are above and beyond basic connectivity, which are looking at network control, looking at analytics, and looking at sales and marketing. And I think that when my expectation for managed Wi-Fi throughout the pandemic was, we're going to get a lot more sales and marketing activity in there. The IT decision makers, and I have actually split these into those with marketing roles versus IT roles, et cetera, and there's not that much difference. Network control, it has been the most popular, and it really comes out here. So they want to be able to monitor network Wi-Fi usage, track and block website visits, etc. Versus, I think that for managed Wi-Fi, one of the big first services was splash pages. You're going to be able to, and that is not something that really businesses have. It has resonated with businesses at all. It's more of a creation of the industry trying to sell it. Analytics, I think, is going, once people begin to understand it better and the dashboards become more user-friendly, et cetera, and they're pretty good. I think that we're going to see a little more sophistication, and there's going to be more analysis. So I would expect that one to move up. But we see that network control is even, sort of more important than saving money, and that's always important. Unified communications. So this is one that I don't think surprised me or would surprise anyone. Which of the following areas, were top of mind for UC&C? So picture and sound quality for video conferencing. So what we're doing today, is pretty good. Everybody's comfortable with it. We are not going back to voice only or just sort of a collaborative slide. I know everybody's a little Zoom fatigued, but we're going to find our equilibrium when it's more important to speak face to face, and then of course live events. I can't wait, but this is here to stay. So picture and sound quality was top of mind. The one that I've done some work on in other surveys as well is training and setup. That is something that people really want. You can do it virtually. So it's one of those sort of considerations that gets shuffled aside sometimes, I think. And then the third one here, migrating from our previous voice system to a new voice platform. That's big. So that was 36% of. So when we asked, 25% of the respondents said, yeah, we're making a major change in our UC&C and voice. You apply that 36% to 25%, and you get, it nets out at around 10% or so. I know that's a lot of math. It does net out to around 10% of, all the businesses that we surveyed that indicate that they're migrating to a new voice platform during the pandemic period. So, either you're moving off of an old legacy system and into a hosted VoIP platform, or maybe you're moving from a hosted VoIP platform into cloud communications. But there's a lot of movement in there. And the way that I think that applies back to internet connectivity and fiber demand in particular is when you're in flux, when you're making decisions on your telecom services in general, you start to evaluate everything. And so if you're, for example, you're on cable modem, or if you're, and cable modem has still got a lot of life left in it, or DSL, and then you move over to fiber. I think at that point you start to look at your new ISP, perhaps see what they have, and start to reevaluate your overall voice and data needs. And I think that that's what's been happening with UC&C, and I think it will continue to happen. So I think it's going to be a sort of an exciting area. Okay, let's move to the next slide. So 5G. This is the area that really, I think that a lot of service providers, particularly as they're building out fiber or anticipating fiber builds, not only their existing infrastructure, whatever they might have, but as they're building out, what can we expect for take rates? Is 5G FWA really going to eat into sort of that business model? These are questions that we want to ask and have aspects answered in this way. If you are thinking of moving to 5G, why would you move from fixed over to mobile? Well, a lot of people think, or a lot of companies think it's going to be faster, which is, as we all know on this call, I think not true. You're going to get 100 megs and by 50 maybe as far as internet throughput. They think it might be more reliable. It's not going to be more reliable than fiber. Nothing is. I'm anticipating as we move into more and more FWA becoming available versus fiber, and maybe even seeing a movement from fiber to FWA from cable modem. I know you would think, wait a second, who would ever move from fiber to FWA unless it was a way less expensive solution? Those that don't really understand it that well, because when I first got these results back, I figured, well, it has to be DSL and satellite that are driving people to think that FWA is going to be faster than an existing service. Went in, parsed it out, almost just as many fiber to the home and cable modem subscribers think that FWA is going to be faster. So in the next 2 or 3 years, this is going to be vetted, and sort of we'll see what happens after that. So I'm guessing that just as the fiber build is reaching a greater stage of maturation, and we're over 50% or so addressable market, that's when the sort of the FWA question is going to come in, and we'll see another rollover, another migration from technology to technology. And let's look at the next slide. So you would expect when you're looking at mobile voice and data through the pandemic, what would the major changes be? We've got upgrades to 5G. We've got devices needing upgrading. Those were things that I think anybody that looks at the market was expecting, along with saving money. But increasing or decreasing employee reimbursement. So another, sort of look at the dynamics that are happening here. And this again was one of the things that surprised me. The increasing employee reimbursement did not surprise me, but decreasing or eliminating. And so, how do we take that? How do we read that? Again, it's the sort of the fixed remote concept versus the mobile remote concept, and I think that the enterprise and mid-market resources really for subsidies are moving to fixed for the work from home arena. So that's something that internet service providers really need to think about, which is, have we moved into a new idea where employers need to take a greater role. And to me, that's an overall package. So I did a deep dive on U.S. business bundling, and the ones that come to the top of the chart all the time are a combination of internet backup, cybersecurity, and higher upstream internet capabilities, but cybersecurity, internet backup, and managed Wi-Fi are all sort of packaged up. So regardless of your broadband access connectivity, an over-the-top package for both work from home and home businesses that incorporate cybersecurity and incorporate internet backup for all encasing that reliability story, to me is the next big, and throw in
Matt, as we're out of time, can you just kind of maybe give a quick wrap up? And
yes, I can. Here, so the next slide was the top takeaways. So basically, we're looking at 20 to 30% of businesses making major changes. And then again, driving home, I guess, Gary, my point on work from home internet connectivity, subsidies. And then with mobility, the major takeaway for me was the expectation that 5G is going to be faster. And I'll tell you something, that expectation is more widely held in the mid-market than it is small business. A lot of small businesses don't know. But mid-market IT decision makers believe that 5G is going to be faster. And these guys are supposed to, these people are supposed to be educated along these lines. And then communications, that movement to newer technology is the big story through the pandemic. And then looking at the reduced spending, a lot of people, we could look at reduced spending and say, it has to happen because of retail. Retail is only 10% of the overall U.S. business market. So it's the most in our face, and we see the most changes happening with retail, but there's a big bunch of companies that have nothing to do with retail out there that are making these changes throughout the pandemic itself. So,
well, Matt, this was really interesting, and kind of, I guess, the key takeaways is that, our homes are now part of the enterprise network. And so we are seeing more subsidies to, employers recognizing that's great. A little concerning that, all the 5G marketing is confusing people to make them think it's going to be better than fiber. But luckily, it will be a large part of that will be fiber. So 5G should be awesome when we get to true 5G. Anyway, really appreciate you sharing your research and insight with our audience today. I want to thank everyone for joining us today, and we're going to get back together next Wednesday. We're going to be discussing the NTIA NOFO with Matt Schmidt from Illinois State Broadband Office. So you're not going to want to miss that. We'll see you guys next Wednesday. Thank you.